all things Astros with your hosts, sports writer Jeff Balke and Astros broadcaster and former third baseman Jeff Blum. Now, here's Balke and Blummer.
What is up, Astros fans? Welcome to episode 52 of the Believe in Astros podcast on the Believe Podcasting Network. I'm Jeff Balke, alongside my partner Jeff Blum, who is still in Florida, but about to head back home from spring training, having called a handful of games, admirably as always. Did you get any sun, Blummer? You look like maybe you got a little sun.
I hope so. I'm one of those gradual sunbathers because, number one, I'm pasty and my skin absorbs the UV rays at an astonishing rate that turns into lobster color. And, yeah, I think we have the same issue. But my wife has been, since I've met my wife and have been playing baseball, she has just been sunblock. So now it's just second nature for me to slap on, 15 to 25, SPF and go out there. So I try and do my best, but over the years, I've actually got some sun damage. But so far,
I get a little farmer. I get the farmer tan a little bit sometimes. But the thing is, I'm like what happens to me is I go basically I turn into two things. I either go to one giant freckle or I turn completely solid red. You never know. It's a crapshoot out there in the sun. But I'm like you, just like my wife is always like, put on sunscreen. So like it's just part of the deal.
You can find us on put on sunscreen.
Yes.
It's a good move.
Dude, it's actually and as you get older, especially you start getting weird. It's not even just because of the cancer problem. It's because of all the weird spots you get. Just because it's like I don't take I'm not vain or anything.
No.
A little.
I'm not on TV every day.
Yeah, you are. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Stitcher, and of course YouTube. Be sure to like and subscribe to keep up with us. And give us a follow on Twitter at Believe in Astros. You can find me at Jeff Balke, Blummer at Blummer27, all over social media. Thanks to everyone who's given us 5 stars and left us reviews on Apple. Keep that business up. If you haven't, go ahead. Make it happen. Obviously, send us your comments, questions. We love seeing all those, and we read them. For example, today's question, who is Justin Dirden?
Oh,
and
man.
we will talk a little bit about it because we talked a little bit about it on the last one. But I want to discuss that a little bit because he's making it hard for people to not pay attention to him, as you might notice. All right, quick word for our sponsor. BetOnline remains your number one source for all sports betting this season. Everything from pro and college basketball, UFC, MMA, and more. Here's a question for you. Would the University of Houston Cougars men's basketball team beat the Houston Rockets?
Yes,
and there is,
and they would scream, "Whose house?"
Cougs house. I think it might be close. Just saying. I mean, the Rockets are more talented, but they might turn the ball over 30 times. Just putting it out there. You'll always find the latest odds, team matchup info, player news, and game trends at BetOnline. With live betting options, free contests, and live scores for almost any sport or game imaginable, BetOnline is truly the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite leagues and events. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to join. Receive a 50% welcome bonus with your first deposit. Make sure to use promo code BLEAV to receive your rewards. BetOnline, where the game starts. So I do want to talk a little bit about Dearden, as we mentioned. First of all, how's the week been? Like, what are your observations over the course of the week? What have you seen? Has there been anything funny or weird? Have you eaten any really good food? Like, never mind what's happening on the field. Let's find about Blummer's personal life on this trip.
It's been good. You know what? There's a place just up the street from the hotel we're staying at, and it's kind of funny because it's called Rocco's Tacos, and I am obviously extremely food biased toward Mexican food, so it's been kind of a staple for us when we come here, especially Julia, TK, and I when we're together. Julia left a couple of days ago. TK, I think, he's leaving and coming back to do some radio, but that usually seems to be the meeting spot for us. We're pretty much creatures of habit. But as far as anything crazy or abnormal, not really. But the hotel I'm staying at has a free continental breakfast, and I think every Astro fan is staying here. And so I'm the guy that went to the gym early, and the gym's right next to the buffet for some reason, and I mean, you get fans knocking on the window, hey, so it's kind of like,
You're like,
hey.
man, I'm on the treadmill, bro.
Yeah, and I'm like, I'm sweating, pitting out, grunting, and I'm like, this is not what they probably envision seeing. But to their credit and amazement, in my mind, they still want a picture, they still want an autograph, they still want the conversation when I'm standing there, half drenched and exhausted. So, credit to them, and that's probably the most odd thing that's happened. But other than that, everything's been pretty damn smooth, and I can't get over how nice the weather's been. I don't know what it's like back in Houston right now, but it has been perfect out here.
It's cloudy and gross, but this weekend's going to be spectacular in Houston.
There we go. I'm bringing the weather with me.
That's right. I will say this, Blummer. Kudos to you for getting up early in the morning and going to the hotel gym.
But like you said, it's like you've got this, and I don't know what it is too, man. That could be a whole nother psychological podcast, but I don't know if it's the competitiveness or the fact that I'm hanging around 25-year-old Adonises every day that I'm like, man, I can't show up, looking sloppy. So I still have this urge to stay in shape, and obviously my wife is gorgeous, and that's motivation too. But hanging around these young guys, Zach Daniels, I stood next to him and I was like, dear God, they're building people different these days because he's enormous, he's jacked, he's athletic. He can do it all, and it's fun to watch because these guys are in great shape. But yeah, it's just, I appreciate the credit, but man, dude, the older I get, the harder I got to work.
Yeah, I'm gonna go hit the gym today after this podcast is over. I'm gonna, you got
to keep that stuff flexed for the tats you keep getting, man. Good for you. I saw that.
That's right.
That's a nice tattoo, a nice sentiment, dude. I appreciate that.
Got the new ink. Thanks. I appreciate that. Got some ink for my niece who passed away last year. The other one, it's odd. It's like I've got one tattoo that's for my dad. And then I've got one. These are the only two tattoos I've gotten, and I'm over 50 when I started getting them. So never too late, I guess. But the other one for my niece. And then I told my mom recently, I said, if you play your cards right, there's space left for you.
Oh, dear Lord. That's a unique relationship you've got there.
I know. My mom, she laughed. I know,
it's great.
But it's like, but yeah, thanks. I appreciate that. Yeah, that's the thing. I can't be flexing and have big old flabby ass arms with the ink on there. Yeah, my wife still doesn't think I should do the whole sleeve.
Dude.
But I definitely have a couple others that I already want, and the guy who's been doing them, he's a guy I know. He's really good at it.
Yeah,
and I'm like, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? He's like, oh yeah, we can do that, no problem. So we'll see. Hopefully, I'll turn into the dude from Rage Against the Machine, the bass player who just has black upper arms.
Yeah,
it's just solid black. That's all it is.
It's kind of vicious looking.
That's hardcore. And that, speaking of in shape, that guy is crazy in shape.
I know, right?
He is a workout hound, Okay, so let's first talk about Justin Dirden. We talked about him a little bit the other day. There was an article about him in the Chronicle about the possible... Could he make a 40-man roster? And obviously, the guy I think he has to beat out is Jake Myers, right? I mean, I think that's the guy he's going to have to beat out. They already have a couple. Bly Madris is on their 40-man roster. So never forget Bly Madris. How could you forget that name? But when you look at it, the Astros roster is stacked like it has been. But man, you cannot argue with the numbers. Like the guy just hits and he keeps hitting. Like what do you do with a guy like that? I mean, we talked a little bit about the fact that he could end up with another team, but if the guy just hits, like what do you do in that circumstance? How do you handle that?
Well, the first thing is if I'm on the outside looking in, if I'm an Astro hater, which there are plenty of them, and we know this.
Yeah.
You're watching Justin, and I'm sorry to correct you, but part of the business is pronouncing names right, and it's Dearden. Oh yeah, but it looks like Dearden. Okay. Yeah, but
good to know Dearden.
Yeah. So, but if I'm one of those haters, and I'm watching the Astros, I'm going, son of a bitch. Where do they find these guys? I'm in the organization. I like the Astros, and I'm going, holy crap. Justin Dirden's legit, man.
Yeah,
he's a very good athlete. He's got the big league beard going. He's had to grind a little bit. He didn't have that prototypical path where he went to a major college, gets drafted, and shows up. He went to a couple of different small schools. And he was in that 2020 year where he was supposed to get drafted, but they only had the 5 rounds because of COVID. So he was an undrafted free agent. And he said he had a couple of offers, but the Astros made the best offer to him, and he shows up. And he's only 2 years into his minor league career, and he has shown up here in big league camp and really kind of like turned some heads. And not just kind of like gradually. It's been a snap of the neck because he's hit his first home run to the opposite field. He's a left-handed hitter too, which is great. Opposite field, pull side home run. He's playing unbelievable defense. He laid out, made a catch the other day.
Yeah, flash that leather.
Flashing the leather. But he's also, you see a little bit of that baseball savvy in a play he had the other day. Runner on first base hit to his left in between the first baseman and second baseman, and he charged in and came up firing and hit Jose Altuve square in the chest with this throw and stopped the runner at second base. And that's kind of that internal baseball instinct that you want to see from an outfielder that can stop runners from advancing another 90 feet. And it was funny because he did that in the second inning, I think. Later on in the fifth, there was a runner that just completely shut it down before he got to second base. He's like, I'm not even going to test this guy trying to go to third. So there's a lot of things trending in the right direction for a Justin Dirden. And the left-handed aspect of it, I think, makes him very appealing. And as much as we say, Dearden's playing for 29 other teams, there's guys like Jake Myers that could be playing for 29 other teams also.
Right.
So that's where that decision I think you're kind of coming to, where you start to decide, do we keep the younger guy? Can we package that guy with somebody? There's some scenarios being played out, I think, upstairs.
Well, I think also, the one of the key question marks for Dearden, and thank you for that correct pronunciation, was his ability. They consider him an average defender, but the big thing is he has an above-average arm. And the guy has a cannon from the outfield, which means, and he's fast. They talked about his base path speed was really high, so he's a guy that can get to balls in center field, for example. So being a guy that could have could back up in center field, and he is a left-handed bat. The Astros love having those left-handed bat options, which they don't have a ton of them, and so I don't know if he's going to make the Major League Club. I think it's probably a long shot.
Yeah,
but
it's a long shot, yeah.
But, man, has he been impressive this first week of spring training. And, frankly, if he remains this impressive throughout spring training, I think, there's going to have to be some decisions made, particularly depending on what happens with Jake Myers, who's playing today. We'll have to see. Mainly with Jake, can Jake Myers throw, or is his arm just literally falling off? So we'll have to wait and see. All right, so I want to go over a few guys here that I've been reading some stuff, and so there's a few guys I kind of want to get your just take on in terms of where we're projecting them this season. I think the Astros. I was reading the Baseball Prospectus's Astros season preview, and basically they have the Astros winning between 95 and 100 games. No real shock there. They describe them as like a boulder on the top of a hill, just waiting to crush you, which I think is probably not a terrible description. But they had some interesting takes on a few guys, and I'm curious to get your take on them. They first of all is Kyle Tucker, and listen, we all know that Kyle Tucker's already an all-star. He's a Gold Glove winner. The guy's probably the best right field defender in the American League. But Baseball Prospectus, that they're modeling, thinks that he's going to take a leap this year, which I think is really fascinating. And the main reason they think of it is because they think he's going to improve his plate discipline, which he did struggle at the plate last year. He was not as good as the year before in terms of average and on-base percentage. The other thing is they think he's going to steal more bases. I mean, we could have a 30-30 year in the offing for Kyle Tucker coming off arbitration where he lost. I mean, you start to wonder, is there a little bit of a chip on that shoulder? They're projecting him at a 4.7 WAR. Do you see the same thing? I know you were really bullish on Kyle Tucker, particularly in the postseason. I'm wondering what you think about him coming this year.
I am a Kyle Tucker fan, and I do believe that he is going to be that 30-30 guy. You're right about the plate discipline. If you're going to try and pick him apart, I can't do it to the extent the Astros did in arbitration and talk him out of about $2.5 million. But we saw a regression in the batting average, but I don't really think that we saw a regression in production. He's still able to drive in runs. He's still able to steal bases. He scores runs. The one thing that the Astros love is guys getting on base, and that's the more. And what's crazy, and I think to the point of this article is if he does get more selective and he stays locked into every single at bat, he is going to become that much tougher of an out. Because you could, last year you could get him to chase early. He would swing at the first pitch and he'd fall behind in counts and then just all of a sudden disappear in at bat. But if he stays consistent and forces pitchers to get in the zone, he's going to get more pitches to hit. And we know that when that ball's in the zone, he has the power to drive it out, to be a 30-home run guy. We also know that he has the ability just to hit, period. And one thing I've been watching in these spring training games is how many of these left-handed hitters on both teams, whoever the opponent was, and especially Kyle Tucker, are they going to try and go up the middle? There was a great at-bat in yesterday's game with J.J. Metajevic, going left on left, and he really forced his front shoulder to stay closed, let the ball travel, and hit it was a line drive to center field. It wasn't crazy smoked because he kind of brought the hands in, but it was in a position where the shortstop in a shift situation might have been able to jump up and catch it. And the other day in St. Lucie, Kyle Tucker had a couple of hits, and it was left center, right center. So all of a sudden I'm going, these guys are seeing the field as hitters completely different, and that's dangerous for Kyle Tucker because if he does become the 30-30 guy and you add a 280-plus batting average to that, RBIs are going to go up, runs are going to go up, and the value of that guy is going to go up.
Yeah, I think you're right. I'm going to be real curious to see, I wonder, too, how it's going to affect him, the tempo, because Kyle Tucker was a very deliberate guy in the box.
Yes.
He's rubbing his hands with that dirt every time. He has my buddy Frank loves to mimic every single person in the box, and he had Kyle Tucker pretty well down. But I mean, he's a pretty. I don't know if you saw the video of Carlos Correa yesterday. He was at an at bat. He fouled a ball off, and then he just started kind of wandering around like he forgot that he couldn't. And then he was like, "Oh!" and he jumped back in, and he had to take a strike because he just, he wasn't paying attention. He just forgot. I imagine that's going to be kind of commonplace here in the spring training. But with Kyle Tucker, if he can keep from getting rushed, if he can get into that routine, he's also a groove hitter. Seems like to me, he's a guy that gets on a roll, and it gets hard to stop him once he gets on a roll. I have high hopes for him. I hope he's that good this year. I hope he is 4.7 more, and I hope he gets more plate discipline. That would be amazing. Next up is Jeremy Pena, and the reason I bring him up is because Pena had a decent year last year, but he had kind of a rookie year. It was up and down. He had 20 home runs, 20-plus home runs, but he was, one of the things that we saw last year was he had a 3.9 walk percentage, which is not good. Another guy who needs a little bit better plate discipline. But when you look at him, he was great defensively, why his WAR was as high as it was. But the thing is, we talk about him, but he was a freaking star of the postseason, right? So you talk about him like, well, Pena probably needs to improve, but it's only we see him. He made as Kenny Smith famously said, in the regular season you make your name, in the playoffs you make your fame, and he certainly made his fame. What is he going to need to do this season, really, to gain some of that consistency, particularly at the plate, and what do you think he's doing to accomplish that?
Well, it's hard to think about Jeremy Pena without thinking about what he did in the postseason. And It's one of those things where we don't remember how you started. We remember how you finish. And he finished so extremely well that that's all we can remember. And that's all we can think about when we do see Jeremy Pena. But if you do go back to the regular season, you're absolutely right in the sense that he had that rookie year, because you're going to have great highs, you're going to have some lows, you're going to find that medium, you're going to have some good months, and then all of a sudden you're going to be like, what happened to this guy? But that's just part of the growing pains because the league is trying to figure you out, and as a rookie, you're trying to figure yourself out in the league. And early on, Jeremy Pena had some quirks in his swing that really moved his head a little bit, and he had the tendency to chase some sliders, and he had issues with that for about 5 months. Then he gets to September, and he's working his tail off, figures something out in the cage, kind of gets rid of that leg kick a little bit, has a nice little waggle of the bat to get him ready, and he started to drive the baseball, but he also started to lay off that slider out of the zone. And once pitchers started to realize that, they didn't panic, but they were like, okay, he's not chasing that. We got to find another way to get him, but they couldn't get him. And that was because he slowed down that leg kick, his head got still, he saw the ball better. So the biggest thing for Jeremy Pena is just to get that feeling back in spring training and just repeat it over and over again and just stay consistent with it. But I think he is going to get tested early on this season with a lot of breaking balls, sliders, curveballs off the plate. To see if he continues to chase. But once he establishes that he's not going to chase off the zone, he's only going to get better. But the thing is for him is just to be more consistent, and that's just what he's got to work on.
I'll tell you, I was rewatching the game against Seattle with Jordan's walk-off, and he had an incredible at bat before. We talk about Jordan's walk-off.
That's the guy.
Yeah, Jeremy Pena hit a ball that was kind of out of the strike zone. He was down in the count, and he just slapped that thing up the middle for a base hit. That was a huge deal at that time. And I hope we see more of that guy. Yeah, because that guy was special.
Well, that was a good at bat, but it was also a cerebral at bat, because if you do chase that pitch off the plate, it's almost as if you're anticipating it. And if I can get the barrel to it, I'm going to go ahead and hit it. And that's kind of what he did.
Yeah, agreed. So the third guy on this list is Hunter Brown. We're all expecting big things from him, obviously. But, one thing that I think I'm curious about, your opinion about, is his control. We obviously saw he didn't have great control in his first outing in spring training. I think he needed like 36 pitches. Hit a guy.
Smoked him.
Yeah, smoked him good. He's got a vaguely Nuke LaLoosh vibe about him, right? Mm-hmm. It's like 14 strikeouts, 14 walks, or whatever it was. That's been kind of his MO in the minors as well. But he's got to stay in the strike zone in order to really succeed at this level. How do you think he's going to fare now that he's getting a real shot? I mean, with McCullers out, he's clearly going to be their fifth starter. How do you think he fared? I mean, he obviously did fine last year when he came up, but what about going through a full season like that?
Yeah, I think, last year was kind of how do we get him into the rotation? How do we get him into games? Because they were slammed with so many good guys in the rotation. They were healthy, and then the bullpen was stacked. So how would you work him in there? They did a good job of giving him those 20 appearances. But at the same time, I think he only had 7 walks in those 20 appearances, which is a good number. Struck out 22, I think, in 20 1/3. I think he struck out 22. I can't remember, to be honest with you. But I know the walk number was low. But I think the idea in spring training is now you're in that rotation. Now how do you react to that situation? And maybe he was juiced a little bit, just kind of excited about the opportunity. You want to go out there and prove you deserve that spot. Nice. But at the same time, it could be something he was working on in the bullpen. Maybe there was a little tweak in the delivery with Josh Miller where he's trying to find that release point. It works in the bullpen, and all of a sudden you get the adrenaline of being on a mound and seeing a hitter, and you're like, oh, I got to be too fine, and you start to lose that release point. So I think Josh Miller and Bill Murphy, two of the pitching coaches on that team, are going to be working very closely with him to monitor that delivery and that release point and teach him how to repeat that. But I think Hunter Brown has the stuff and has the desire to go out there and get better. So being that it was the first outing, much like Forest Whitley, I want to see what they do in those second, third, and fourth outings and see if they start to, all of a sudden you get this, this wide funnel, if they start to focus and narrow down a little bit and become better, because the stuff is so good. Yeah. The mid to upper 90s and the slider he developed, I mean, it is insane how good this guy can be. But I think it's just relaxing and understanding that he doesn't have to strike everybody out. He can use his stuff and use that defense behind him. Yeah,
I think that's all great stuff. I do kind of with him, I wonder too if he's just not working on stuff. That's always a thing that people forget when they're seeing spring training games, is that a lot of times pitchers are just working on stuff. I remember a few years ago, before Lance McCullers' really good season, I think 2021, he was terrible in spring training. Like, he had a really terrible – but the whole reason he was terrible is because he was working on the curve of his breaking pitch, right? That was his whole thing. He said there were certain spring training games where I was throwing almost entirely nothing but curveballs just to work on the shape of the curveball. And he said I was missing a lot, and so I was getting hit, So I think that's something that we as fans maybe don't look at as closely. Maybe we take that, and players take that for granted, that, they're out there trying to work on things. Never mind adjusting for the pitch clock and, everything else.
Some external
that's going
factors.
on. Everything else that's going on. All right, last guy you mentioned in Forest Whitley. I don't even know if we should even be thinking about this guy. I mean, like, it feels a little like if he has any success this season at all, it feels a little bit like icing on the cake. I mean, like you said earlier, like, damn, Astros, what, are you kidding me? I mean, I don't know if we should. I think all of us, because we've been following Forest Whitley for 5 years or 4 or 5 years or whatever it is, and there have been such high expectations for him for so long. I think there's a part of all fans who are like, come on, man. You had the stuff coming out of high school. And one of the things that was mentioned about him in an article I read the other day was, we forget, and you've said it over, you've pounded this drum, is the COVID season, right? Ugh. He lost a whole season. In addition to he lost 2 because he got suspended for 1 as well. So this is a guy, even though he's been at this 5 years, he's really only had 3, because he was out injured at 1 as well. He's really only pitched like 2 seasons in the minors. And again, 25 years old. What should we expect from him this season?
That's a really good question. I hope that the mind is right, the body is right. He's kind of lowered his release point a little bit, and he's kind of on the side of the baseball, so there's some arm side run there. And, if that's something that makes him comfortable and makes him a little more active around the plate, that would be a good thing. He's always had that really good curveball. So it's just a matter of him putting it together and living up to the hype that we've lived with for so long as Astro fans, because we know for a fact that when he was drafted by Jeff Luhnow around the same time as Kyle Tucker, there were 2 guys that were mentioned in every single trade during the Jeff Luhnow era that didn't get traded. It was Kyle Tucker, it was Forest Whitley.
Yep.
And they had that untouchable label on him. Now we've seen Kyle Tucker, fill out and become who we thought we hoped he could be. Now it's Forest Whitley's time, and I think he's personally, I hope there's a little bit of frustration inside Forest Whitley where he says, what, I'm sick and tired of this. I've got the stuff. I'm going to go show it. And if he does show it, that's just another weapon for the Astros to go out there and attack with. And again, more fans are going to be like, damn, that guy finally showed up. Even with those lost seasons, like you said, there's plenty of ammunition left in that right arm. And he's, I think that there's plenty of durability left in there, but he's got to learn his body. He's got to learn his mind and become that big league player, because I think having Hunter Brown jump over him a little bit and become the guy is another maybe motivating factor for him that he needs to use to get better and stay consistent. Yeah,
I'm with you 100% about that, thinking like, hey, this guy, he just leapfrogged me. I was the darling of the Astros farm system, and now this kid. Like, can you explain just a little bit for people who are listening and watching and might not understand define arm side run? Because we hear that term a lot about pitchers who change their launch angle and all that kind of stuff. Explain that a little bit so people get a better understanding of what that is.
So if the pitcher is standing, nobody on base, standing in their traditional setup, facing home plate, and the arm side, whether they're right-handed or left-handed, because a guy that I always say this about is Framber Valdez. He has great arm side run, and that's why he has a tendency to lose command, is because his ball's moving so damn much. But if a right-handed pitcher is facing a right-handed hitter, he will release the baseball and it will start to move in towards the right-handed hitter. as opposed to Framber Valdez, left-handed to a right-handed hitter, it will tail away to that outside corner to a right-handed hitter. So that's kind of what I'm talking about. And sometimes those guys have a tough time getting to the glove side because there's so much movement and they have to extend a little bit further than maybe some other guys. But that's just basically what it is. They can stay on that. If you're right-handed, you're staying on that right-hand side of the plate, tailing into right-handers. If you're left-handed, it tails into left-handed hitters. But it's good movement, and a lot of times what that does is it jams that right-handed hitter, and you'll actually create a lot of ground balls. And that's why Framber Valdez is such a ground ball monster, is because it's tailing away from right-handed hitters, and they get out in front, roll it over, and he gets those double plays to get out of jams.
I did see a couple of, I watched some of Whitley the other day, and you're right. I mean, he definitely has some of that run, particularly on his fastball. Mm-hmm. And that's honestly with, you want movement on the fastball. The main key is to just keep it in the zone, so you're not to overcompensate for it.
That's
so you're
the biggest thing.
Yeah, so you end up throwing it right down the middle of the plate. Mm-hmm. But yeah, he definitely that. It's obviously a good thing if you can get your control right. So that's good to know. I don't know what to think about Forest Whitley. I'll be honest with you. I have no idea what he's going to do this year. If anything,
let me ask you this. Well, let's say he is good. He pitches well enough to break with the team. What does he do? Is he your 6-man rotation guy, or is he your swing man in the bullpen that gives you multiple innings? I mean, how? That's the other question. You're almost like, man, what if he does pitch good and we need him? Where do we put him?
Blummer, that's another difficult question to answer. I'm glad it's above my pay grade.
Yeah,
but
I'm putting it on you. No, I'm just kidding.
let me get Dana Brown on the phone right now. So Dana, here's the story. So it's a really good question, though. I would imagine to start, he's probably going to be that long reliever guy. Mm-hmm. You feel like
that's a good thing to have
role
early on in the season too, by the way.
Yeah, exactly. Especially because that's what Christian Javier's role was early on in last year.
Nailed it.
And so you figure that's probably what's going to happen if that is the case. Mm-hmm. Of course, the Astros also have Abreu in the bullpen who could fill that role. And I mean, that guy might just come out literally and throw like 97, 98 miles an hour for 2 innings straight.
And we haven't even seen Ryan Stanek yet.
Right. Who had the lowest ERA in bullpen. I think that's the lowest in Astros history last year.
Yeah, he set a record.
0.91. So yeah, we haven't even seen that guy yet. The bullpen is going to be I have a feeling, I have this weird, creepy feeling that the Astros are going to need production from their bullpen this year. Mm-hmm. Being able to stay healthy in your starting rotation the way they did last year with only 7 guys pitching, a start, that never happens.
That's ludicrous.
It just doesn't happen. So I feel like they're going to need that bullpen, and it really does seem like they are just stacked in the bullpen, man. I mean, when you consider that they re-signed Montero and they've got Stanek and Abreu and Presley and assuming Phil Maton's hand has healed from his battle with a locker. They've got a lot of depth in that, and they've got guys out there too. Like, who knows if Paredes is going to come in and be able to give them some time in the bullpen. He's still got command issues as well, but I mean, they've got a lot of options out there.
Well, and Ty Buttry's coming back. He's got a history with the Angels. He's making a return. I think some of the Dusty Baker.
Matt Gage.
The bullpen could be a completely different podcast, which would probably be a good idea. But I was just with you. I'm with you. I haven't seen Matt Gage yet, and there's a reason he's here, is because of the left-handed ability. Gosh, there's another guy I can't remember his name. But you got Blake Taylor still hurt, Parker Mashinsky still hurt, but they have big league time and have pitched well in that bullpen. But it's just important to note that Dusty really likes having that left-hander out in that bullpen. Is it Matt Gage or the other guy I can't remember right now? But,
look, I'm just running through the list here as we're sitting here talking. I mean, Hector Neris, who we just simply forgot. Seth Martinez, who pitched tremendously well last year. Yeah. And then Brandon Bielak, who that's a guy who you could see in long.
Well, and that's that Forest Whitley Bielak situation where which one of those guys?
Yeah,
could be vying for the same position.
It's just like we talked about last year. It's just an obscene wealth of of talent on them. And of course, let's be honest, man. I don't think their window is closing anytime soon. Like everybody talks about the window. I don't know. The Astros really right now don't have a window. Now, obviously, you'll start maybe in a couple of seasons. You'll start looking at, okay, are we going to be able to keep Bregman? Is Altuve on the downside of his career? Is Kyle Tucker going to stick around? We'll have to deal with things like that. But honestly, right now, for the Astros, if you're the Astros and you're Astros fans, of which there are many people out there who are not, life is good. And if you're not an Astros fan, you must be furious, which makes me a little happy. Is that wrong?
No, it's all good. No, you know what? Here pretty soon, boo season is going to happen again.
Oh,
and I can't wait because they're going to be booing because they hated the Astros for 2017. Now they just hate the Astros because they're good, and they proved it, and they did it in a way that was actually pretty classy and pretty demonstrative. And I think a lot of fans are like, now F these guys, man. They're still good and they're good. So boo season is about to be upon us, and I think the Astros are looking forward to it again. And it's okay for Astro fans to embrace that.
And you're 100% right. And look, 6 straight years in the
that's a record.
6 straight years in the ALCS, 4 World Series appearances, winning 2. Look, it's dynasty.
Should have been 3.
Should have been 3. You're 100% right. Where art thou, Garrett Cole? But it's the fact that they are this good for this long. It's got to annoy people. It would annoy me if I weren't an Astros fan.
If it was the Yankees, we'd be like, I hate these guys.
If it was the Yankees, this would be like the Yankees when it was like Derek Jeter and A-Rod and that era of the Yankees. Like, enough already. I've had enough. All right, Blummer, you got any big plans for the weekend? You're coming back to Houston?
Dude, heck yeah, I'm coming home for the rodeo, man. Let's go.
Oh, you're going to go to the rodeo this weekend?
Yeah, dude. Are you kidding? Yeah, I'm flying home. Today's Thursday, I believe.
Mm-hmm. It is Thursday.
Okay, Thursday.
Correct.
I'm going to host a Houston Open gala on Friday morning, and then that night I'm going to see Bun B, man. Let's go.
You're going to the H-Town Throwdown.
Heck yeah.
Nice. That is the way to do it. If you're going to if there's any night to go to the rodeo, that's the one. I mean, that's going to be fun as hell. I'm going to see Muse tonight.
Oh, nice.
At
That's
the
a
Toyota
great
Center.
one.
Muse and the opener, Evanescence, which I haven't heard about that band in a while. But that's
I'll tell you what, the lead singer's
pairing.
voice for Evanescence is legit, so that'll be awesome.
Amy Lee, I think is her name. Yeah,
she's amazing.
Yeah, she's redonk. So I'm gonna go see Muse tonight.
That's great.
And that should be fun. And are you gonna find dude? The weather is gonna be so good this weekend. If you don't play golf, I'm gonna be disappointed.
Oh, there's going to be a round. There's going to be a round or two. Yeah, I got to hit up my boy Scott House out at Westwood Country Club and just abuse my privilege with him.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you have privilege, use it. Otherwise, and pass
I'm on
it
scholarship over there. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Blummer. Thanks everybody for joining us. We will be back next week with a fresh pod brought to you by Bet Online. Huge thanks to all the listeners and viewers all across the world. You guys have been great. Liking, subscribing have been excellent. Obviously, we're really getting into the meat now of spring training and the World Baseball Classic is coming as well. So thank you so much for listening and subscribing and giving us 5 stars. Keep it coming. Have a great weekend. We will see you next week. Go Astros.